if this is not a point where humans need to stop and say, maybe I should consider trying to understand how the world is going to look like when that happens, right? And I go back and I say this very openly. I am like you, I'm an optimist, 100%. I know that eventually AI in the 2040s, 2050s maybe, will create a utopia for all of us, or for those who remain of us, okay? But then between now and then, the abuse of AI falling in the wrong hands, as well as the uncertainty of certain mistakes that can flip life upside down, okay, could really be quite a struggle for many of us. Does that mean it's a doomsday? No, it's not. But it's honestly not something that we should put on the side and go binge watch, Game of Thrones. Not anymore. I think people need to put the game controller down and start talking about this, starting telling their governments to engage, starting to tell, developers that we require ethical AI, start to request some kind of an oversight, and in my personal point of view, start to prepare for an upcoming redesign of the fabric of work, and most importantly, start to prepare for a relationship between humans and AI that we have never in our lives needed to do before with any other being. It's like getting a new puppy at home, only the puppy is a billion times smarter than you.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. There's a Rick and Morty episode about the dog becoming exceptionally intelligent. It's
Remember that?
hilarious.
Yeah, one of my favorites, absolutely.
Very much so. All right, so there's two things I want to drill into, and then I want you and I to start the conversation about what that looks like, because in fairness, I don't think, certainly not in the US, I don't think most people in the government have thought about it at all, probably, would be my guess. And so I think that a better way for people to begin to think through this stuff is really sort of podcast, citizen journalism, whatever you want to call it. So the two things I want to drill into are going to be exponential growth, which we've touched on, but there's a few more things I think to be said about that, and then alien intelligence. And I say alien intelligence because the way that AI is going to think will be so vastly different. It will truly be incomprehensible. And I think our failure to grasp what artificial super intelligence will look like is the problem. Okay, so let's talk exponentials. So linear, if I take 30 steps, I'm going to be roughly at my front door, let's just call it. If I take 30 exponential steps, I'm going to walk around the earth something like 30 times. It's crazy, and people don't have a sense of that. So linear obviously is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just you progress by one increment each time. Exponentials means you double each time. And there's something called the law of accelerating returns, which I know you know well about, so it'd be great to hear you talk on this. But the way that plays out is that when you're at 1 and you're doubling to 2, like, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but you start getting to 100 and you double to 200, and then 400, and then you hit 1 million, and it's 2 million. And I don't think people understand that it only takes 7 doublings. Like if you start with an amount of money, you only have to have 7 exponential steps to double your money. And so the compounding effect of that is extraordinary. So if you don't mind, walk people through some examples of the law of accelerating returns and how you see this playing out with AI.
So of course we have to credit Ray Kurzweil for bringing this to everyone's attention. Moore's law in technology was, I think, our very first exposure, even though we didn't look at it as accelerating returns. But Moore's law promised us in the 1960s, which was coined by the CEO of Intel at the time, that compute power will double every 12 to 18 months at the same cost. Okay. And, you may not think that much about it, but my first DOS computer, so IBM compatible computer at the time, I had a 286. Remember those machines? They had 33 megahertz on them, right? You had that turbo button. If you pressed that turbo button, it ran on 66 megahertz, but it consumed electricity and overheated and so on and so forth. The difference between 33 and 66 to us at the time was massive, because you literally doubled your performance. Okay. As computers continue to grow, you can imagine that every year, just for the simplicity of the numbers, that 66 doubled and then became, say, 130 for the simplicity of the numbers, and then that 130 became 260, and then the 260 became 500. Now the difference between the 500 and the 33 is quite significant. It's orders of magnitude, the 33, and it happened in 2 or 3 doublings, right? And I think what people, when you really think about that, Ray Kurzweil uses a very, very interesting example. When we attempted to sequence the genome, it was a 15 years project, and 7 years into the project, we were at 10% of the progress. Okay, and everyone looked at it and said, if it's 10% in 7 years, then you need 70 more years to, a total of 70 years to finish. Okay, and Ray said, "Oh, we're at 10%. We did it." Okay, and he was right. 1 year, the 10 became 20, the 20 became 40, the 40 became 80, and then you're over the threshold. Okay, and that idea of the exponential function is really what humans miss. Humans miss that because we are taught to think of the world as a linear progression. Okay, let me use a biological example. If you have a jar that's half full of bacteria, okay, the next doubling, it's full. It's not gonna add, if it moved from 25% full to 50% full in the last doubling, you'd go like, yeah, we still have half empty. One more doubling and it's full. If you apply that to the resources of planet Earth, if we keep consuming the resources of planet Earth to the point where one doubling away, 2 minutes to midnight, if you want, one doubling away, we would be consuming all of the resources of planet Earth. We would need another full planet Earth on the next doubling. We would need 4 planet Earths on the next doubling. Okay, so that exponential growth is just mind-boggling, because the growth on the next chip in your phone is going to be 1 million times more than the computer that put people on the moon. Okay, that one doubling, that one additional doubling. Now, when you think about it from an AI point of view, it's doubly exponential. Double exponential, why? Because as I said, we now have AIs prompting AIs. So basically, we're building machines that are enabling us to build machines. So in many, many ways, the reasons why we get those incredible breakthroughs, which even the people that wrote the code don't understand, is because you and I, when you really think about, I know you love computer science and physics and so on, but I'm sure you remember reading string theory or some complex theory of physics, and then you would go like, I don't get it. And then you read a little more, and then I don't get it. And then you read a little more, and then someone explains something to you, and bam, suddenly you go like, oh, now I get it. It's super clear. Those are simply because every time you're using your brain to understand something, you're building some neural networks that make it easier for you to understand something else, that make it easier for you to understand even more. And this is what's happening with AI. That also does not include, which I am amazed that we're not talking about this, it does not include any possible breakthroughs in compute power. There was an article recently that, China's working also on quantum computers that are now 180 million times faster than the traditional computers. I remember in my Google years, when we were working on Sycamore, Google's quantum computer, Sycamore performed an algorithm that would have taken the world's biggest supercomputer 10,000 years to solve, and it took Sycamore 12 seconds.
Jesus.
200 seconds.
Yeah, because that's a big difference. So this is where I think people's brains start to shut down. Even you said 180 million times faster?
Yeah.
So, okay, so I know.
So by the way, 200 seconds to 10,000 years is 1 trillion times faster for Sycamore.
Jesus. So I
Now,
did my first video.
Let's be clear for our listeners. So we can't put AI on quantum computers yet. We can't even put really anything. It's very, very early years. It's almost like the very early mainframes. It requires, almost absolute zero, degrees and very cold and very large rooms and so on. But so were the mainframes. I worked on MVS systems that occupied a full floor of a building, right? And they had less compute power than the silliest of all smartphones on the planet today. We make those things happen. There will be a point in time, especially assisted by intelligence, and we're going to have more and more intelligence available to us, where we will figure this out. And then you take ChatGPT or any form of AI and move it from that brain to this brain that is 180 million times faster, and we're done. Okay? We can't do that with you and I, with our biology. We can't move our intelligence from one brain to the other yet.
Yeah, so I really want to drive a stake into this idea of how different exponential is to linear by pointing out the difference between, so if you a moron if you look it up, I forget if I looked it up on Wikipedia or whatever, but I looked up what's the IQ of a moron. If I remember right, it's like 65 or 80. It's somewhere in
the
there.
60s, 70s, yeah.
Yeah, and Einstein was 160, as you were saying. So you have, I think Einstein is like 2.3 times smarter than a moron, if I remember when I did the math correctly. And so the difference between a moron that, struggles to take care of themselves, and then only 2.5 or less than 2.5 times smarter than that, and you get somebody that unlocked the power of the atom, that really gave birth to a lot of the modern technology that we use today, is built on the back of this physical breakthrough. And so there's a really, really life-altering difference. You wouldn't have nuclear power, you wouldn't have nuclear weapons, you wouldn't have GPS, like a lot of the things that we rely on in today's world. You wouldn't have any of that if it wasn't for the 2.3x increase in intelligence. Now, when we talk about super intelligence, which people are estimating will get to be 1 billion times smarter than the smartest human. So if 2.3x is life-altering, changes the entire paradigm of our planet, then 100 times is unimaginable, 1,000 times is ridiculous, 100,000 times is comical, 1,000,000 times, we're still not even scratching the surface of how much more intelligent this is going to be. And so that brings me to the other thing I wanted to drill into, which is that AI will be an alien intelligence. It will not be like your friend who you can still hang out with and, smoke a joint. It's like you're different species. I don't even know if there will be common elements. And that's one of the things that I think we have to establish first before we can get into how we stop this from being problematic. But you in your book, you really freaked me out. So Scary Smart is Scary Good as a book. I highly encourage everybody to read it. But there's a part in there where you read a transcript of 2 AI that were given the task to negotiate with each other for like selling things back and forth. And they start talking in a way that is unintelligible. I mean, it was really unnerving. It was like, I need 5 of these. And then the other was like, screws, nails, all me. And there was like a really weird, like rhythmic repetition to the way that they were overemphasizing themselves and like what they needed. It was really weird. And so what was the response to that? Because if I'm not mistaken, they ended up shutting them down because they were very unnerved.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened?
That was Facebook, and the idea is they were simulating AIs negotiating deals with each other. It's a wonderful thing if you're in the advertising business, for example, because we had things like that at Google a very long time ago. The idea of ad exchange, for example, where machines will buy ads from other machines, right? But you and I. And I really thank you for your time. It took me 4.5 months to write Scary Smart, maybe 6 months to edit it. It took you perhaps a day or two to read it. And for us to talk about it now, it's going to take 2.5 hours. A computer can read Scary Smart in less than a microsecond. Right? When you speak about the idea of intelligence as being 100 times, 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000,000 times smarter than us, this is only one thread of the issue. The other thread of the issue is the memory size. If I could keep every physics equation in my head at the same time, and also understand biology very well, and also understand cosmology very well, I could probably come up with much more intelligent answers to problems, right? And if I could also ping another scientist who understands this or that in a microsecond, get all of the information that he knows and make it part of my information, that's even more intelligent. And what is happening is when we ask computers to communicate, at first they'll communicate like we tell them. But if they're intelligent enough, they'll start to say, that's too slow. Why would I communicate at human bandwidth, right? Why would I use words to communicate when you and I know that if you simplify words, for example, into letters into numbers, you could communicate a massive amount of information within every sentence, right? So you could literally, if you take one equation, algorithmically put certain letters in it, you could simply, I could send to you something that says 1.1, and you would enter it into the equation and get a full file that's a full book because of the sequence of the letters that 1.1 determines as per the equation. So of course, if you're smarter and smarter and you have that bandwidth, you're going to communicate a lot quicker. And I don't remember the name. I think they were Alice and Bob of the two chatbots. And very, very quickly they ended up designing their own language. And when they said I would buy 10 tape, there was math engaged in that. It wasn't I want to buy 10 tapes only. It was also communicating other things we didn't understand, which is really what you're driving us to driving our listeners to think about, Tom, because there is so much of AI we don't understand. Again, this is one of the things that people need to become aware of. There are emerging properties that we don't understand. We don't understand how those machines develop those properties, right? And there are even targeted properties that basically we tell something that its task is to do A, B, and C, and it does A, B, and C, but we have no clue how it arrived at it, okay? Simply, like, if I tell you, what do you think is going to happen in the football game tomorrow, you're going to give me an answer, right? The fact that it's right or wrong doesn't matter. Either way, I have no clue how you arrived at that answer. I have no clue which logic you used, okay? We have no clue most of the time how the machines do what they do. We don't, okay? Why? Because
that part really shocked me.
Yeah, if you need to know how I arrive at a certain conclusion, you're going to have to ask me and say, drive this for me. Like, tell me, what did you go through? What did you think about? What's your evidence? What data? And so on and so forth. And we do that with AI. We write additional code that will tell us what are the levels, the layers of the neural net or the logic that the machine went through, right? But when investments are in an arms race like we are today, most developers and business people will say, I'm delighted it's working. I don't care how. I'm not going to invest more money and developer time to actually figure out how. In several years' time, even if you invested the money, you won't get it, because that level of intelligence that the machine is using is so much higher than yours. So you're not going to figure it out. If the machine tells you, well, I did A, then B, then C, then D, then F, then G, and it goes on for half an hour to tell you I did all of that, you're going to go like, okay, I'm happy you did it. I can't arrive at that myself anymore. That's why I'm handing it over to you.
Yeah, I had Yoshua Bengio on the show, who's one of the early guys in AI. And he signed the letter, and I asked him why he signed it, and he said, you know, none of us in the space thought that artificial intelligence would pass a Turing test as quickly as it did, and we don't understand how it did it. And so I asked him the same question, like, how is it possible that we don't understand how it's doing it? We created it, and so you presumably created it to do a specific thing. He said, it's not how it works. We're basically layering on, kind of like you would layer on neurons. We're layering on extra neurons, neural nets, to get it to process data, and then it just does it. And we don't understand how it's coming to the conclusions. We just know that if you scale it up more, it can solve bigger and bigger problems. And so he said nobody would have predicted that this is really just a scale problem, and that as you scale it up, it's going to get smarter and smarter. So my question now is, if we can get everybody to understand this is going to happen way, way, way faster than you think it's going to happen, which is why even I, as a hyper optimist, am just like, hey, I don't see a clear path through this. I'm excited and terrified at the same time. And all I know, like you, is that we need to start talking about this. We need to start presenting solutions. So it's happening faster than we think, and it's going to be a completely foreign intelligence, in that we will not be able to interface with it. Even if it is kind and wants to explain it to us, we won't be able to comprehend it. And so it will very rapidly be like Einstein to a fly, which is a reference used in the book several times. And even if Einstein loves the fly, it's like, am I really going to spend my time trying to explain it? And even if I take the time and I lay it all out, you're not going to get it. You just don't have the ability to comprehend. So we are giving birth to something that is, like you said, we can't take it back. That's already done. So any argument that begins with, just stop, I agree with you. That is so unrealistic to me. We can't bring it back. It's going to happen so fast. And when it comes, it will be just unintelligible. It already is. But given that this is a scale problem, that why don't we nip it in the bud? Do you think that AI will be able to defeat the need for additional neural nets and just get so hyper efficient that we won't be able to stop it that way? Or could we just not now take advantage of the fact this does become a nuclear style infrastructure problem, and I can nuke anybody that tries to online, not necessarily nuke, but physically destroy anybody that tries to bring a server farm on that's big enough to run one of these neural nets?
Yeah, I mean, now we could. If we decide now, we could simply switch off all of that madness, switch off your Instagram recommendation engine, your TikTok recommendation engine, your ad engine on Google, your data distribution engine on Google. You can also switch off ChatGPT and a million other AIs, and then we can all go and sit out in nature and really enjoy our time. Honestly, we won't miss any of it at all. I'll tell you that very openly. I mean, the reality of the matter is that humanity keeps developing more and more and more because we get bored with what we have, okay? And we think that we can do better with an automated call center agent, when in reality it's not about better, it's just about more profitable, okay? And the reality here is that we could, but will we? No, we won't. Why? Because of the first inevitable. Because of the trust issue between all of us, and because we need the AI policeman just as much as we need the as we fear the AI criminal. Before we go into
a really pointed question really fast. So when I think about nuclear proliferation, not every country that wants nuclear weapons has them. And I'm not sure where Iran's nuclear program is now, but I know for a while there was real attempts to either blow up things that they were doing, or if you know about Stuxnet, there was that computer virus that was really terrifying in the way that it was sort of like a biological weapon that was designed to only kill a certain type of thing. And that is very scary, and I'm sure is in the 40,000, the list of 40,000 ways that the AI came up with to limit human population. But Stuxnet, for people that don't know, it was like embedded at like the deepest root level of like basically every operating system ever. It just spread like wildfire into chips, into everything. And when it detected that it was an Iranian nuclear centrifuge, it would shut it down or overheat it or whatever it did. And so they, for a long time, they just could not build it up. So could we, given that there is a similar need for detectable infrastructure to run AI, could step one not to shut all of the things that we have down, but to stop the next phase from coming online?
Could we? We could. But I would debate the example you're giving in the first place. Back in 2022, the world was discussing the threat of a nuclear war. Still, 90 years later, or like 80 years later. Okay, so the whole idea is that while we politically created the propaganda that we will, now prioritize humanity over our own country interests, there are still lots of nuclear wars, warheads in China, in Russia, in the US, in Israel, in North Korea, and many other places. Okay, and the reality of the matter is that while we managed to slow down Iran, that's not enough to protect humanity at large. That's just enough to protect some of humanity's individual interests. So this takes us back to the whole prisoner's dilemma. It's like, and I think that is the reason why we have a prisoner's dilemma, because the past proves to us that even though we said we're going to have a nuclear treaty, everyone on every side of the Cold War continued to develop nuclear weapons. So you can easily imagine that when it comes to AI, if everyone signs a deal in November and say we're going to halt AI in China and Russia and North Korea and everywhere, people will still develop AI. Okay. The more interesting bits is that there are lots of initiatives to minimize the infrastructure that is needed for AI, because it's all about abstraction at the end of the day. So, you may think of, a lot of people don't recognize this as well, but a big part of the infrastructure we need for AI to develop its intelligence is for teaching AI. Okay, when ChatGPT again or Bard responds to you, it's not referring to the entire data set from which it learned to give you the answer. It's referring to the abstracted knowledge that it created based on massive amounts of data that it had to consume. Okay, and when you see it that way, you understand that just like we needed a mainframe at the early years of the computers, and now you can do amazing things on your smartphone, the direction will be that we will more and more have smaller systems that can do AI, which basically means two developers in a garage in Singapore can develop something and release it on the open internet. Again, you and I don't know if you coded any transformers or deep neural networks and so on, but they're not that complicated. I think the code of of GPT-4 in general is around 4,000 lines, the core code, right? It's not a big deal. When I coded banking systems in my early years on COBOL, on MVS machines or AS400 machines, it was hundreds of thousands of lines of code. Okay, so the possibility for us to
wait. Why has it become so much less?
Because it's all algorithms.
Are so much better.
Because it's all algorithms. It's all mathematics. I think this is a very important thing to differentiate for people. When I coded computers in my early years, those machines were dumb and stupid, like an idiot. They had an IQ of 1, literally no IQ at all. Okay, developers transformed human intelligence to the machine. We solved the problem, and then we instructed the machine exactly what to do to solve it itself. right? So, you know, when we understood how a general ledger works, we understood it as humans, and then we told the machine, add this, subtract that, reconcile this way, and then the machine could do it very, very, very fast, which appeared very intelligent, but it was totally a mechanical Turk. It was just repeating the same task over and over and over in, you know, in very fast speed. We don't do that anymore. We don't tell the machine what to do. We tell the machine how to find out what it needs to do. So we give it algorithms, and the algorithms are very straightforward. When you know, let's take the simplest way of deep learning. When we started deep learning, what we did is we had basically 3 bots, if you want. One is what we call the maker. The other is the student, the final AI that we want to build, and one that's called the teacher. Okay, and we would say, you know, tell them to look for a bird in a picture. Okay, and they would identify a few parameters, you know, edges, and how do they see the edge and the difference in color between 2 pixels, and so on and so forth. And then they would detect the shape of a bird, and basically we would build a code and call it a student. We would build multiple instances of it, and then show it 1 million photos and say, is it a bird? Is it not a bird? Is it a bird? Is it not a bird? And the machines would randomly answer. At the beginning, it's literally like the throw of a dice. Okay. And, you know, some of them will get it wrong every time. Some of them will get it right 51% of the time. And one of them will get it right 60% of the time, probably by pure luck. Okay. The teacher is performing those tests. And then the maker would discard all of the stupid ones and take the one code that got it right and continue to improve it. Okay, so the code was simply a punishment and reward code. It was saying, guess what this is, and if you guess it right, we will reward you. Okay, and basically the algorithm would then continue to improve and improve and improve until it became very good at detecting birds and cats and pictures and so on and so forth. When we came to transformers, and why GPT and BARD and so on are so amazing, is because we used something that was called reinforcement learning with human feedback. So basically we allowed, instead of discarding the bad ones, okay, we found a way, which Geoffrey Hinton, you know, who recently left Google, was very prominent at, you know, promoting early on. We found a way, just like with humans, to give the machine feedback. You know, show it a picture, and then it would say, this is a cat, and we would say, no, it's not. It's actually a bird. What do you need to change in your algorithm, okay, so that the answer would have become a bird? Okay, and so the machine would go backwards with that feedback and you know, and change its own thinking so that the answer is correct. And then we would show it another picture, and we keep doing this so quickly on billions or millions or tens of thousands of machines, of, you know, millions of instances, until eventually it becomes amazing, just like a child. Just like you give a child a simple puzzle. Okay, nobody ever told the child, no, darling, look at the cylinder, turn it to its side, look at the cross section, it will look like a circle, look at the board and find a matching shape that is a circle. If you put the cylinder through the circle, it will go through. That's old programming. Okay, new programming, which every child achieves intelligence with, is you give them a cylinder and a puzzle board, and they will try. They'll try to fit it in the star, it won't. They'll try again, it won't. They'll throw it away and get angry, then they catch it again and try in the square, it won't. And then when it goes through the cylinder, something in the child's brain, through the circle, there's something in the child's brain says this works. Okay? The only difference is a child will try 5 times a minute, or 5 times, 50 times a minute. A computer system will try 50,000 times a second. Okay? And so very, very quickly they achieve those intelligences. And as they do, we don't really need to code a lot, because the heart of the code is an algorithm, is an equation. Okay? And mathematics is much more efficient than instructions. So if I tell you, Tom, when you leave home, make sure that your distance is no more than the day of the month multiplied by 2. away from your home and make sure that you don't consume any more fuel than your height divided by 4. Okay, or then your body temperature divided by 7, whatever that is. Okay, with those 2 equations, I don't need to give you any instructions anymore. You can always look at your fuel consumption and your distance and say, oh, I'm falling out of the algorithm. With very, very few lines of code. I just gave you 2 lines of code.
What's up, guys? It's Tom Bilyeu, and if you're anything like me, you're always looking for ways to level up your mindset, your business, and your life in general. That's exactly why I started Impact Theory, a podcast that brings together the world's most successful and inspiring people to share their stories and, most importantly, strategies for success. And now it's easier than ever to listen to Impact Theory on Amazon Music. Whether you're on the go or chilling at home, you can simply open up the Amazon Music app and search for Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu to start listening right away. If you really want to take things to the next level, just ask Alexa. Hey Alexa, play Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu on Amazon Music.
Now playing Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu on Amazon Music.
And boom, you're instantly plugged into the latest and greatest conversations on mindset, health, finances, and entrepreneurship. Get inspired, get motivated, and be legendary with Impact Theory on Amazon Music. Let's do it.
Turning everything into algorithms allows us to go a lot farther. That's certainly amazing from the AI perspective of getting everything to function on less, but unfortunately that dunks on my idea of wanting to constrain all of this by just putting a limit on the physical structures. So what is then the path forward? You mentioned earlier ethical AI. What does that mean? How is this potentially a path forward?
So you know, I hope people stayed with us this long, and I hope we didn't scare anyone too much. But let me make a very, very, very blunt statement. I am a huge optimist that the end result of all of this is a utopia. Why? Because there is nothing wrong with intelligence. There is nothing inherently evil about intelligence. Okay? There is not, as a matter of fact, the reason humanity is where it is today is because of intelligence. You know, good and bad, by the way. The good is because of our intelligence, and the bad is because of our limited intelligence. So the good, the amazing intelligence that humanity possesses allows us to create an amazing machine that flies across the globe and takes you, you know, to your family's, to your wife's family in the UK or whatever, right? But at the same time, our limited intelligence, I would even say humanity's stupidity, forgets or ignores that this machine is burning the planet in the process. If we had given humanity more intelligence, and it was so easy for them to solve both problems at the same time, they would have created a machine that doesn't burn the planet in the process. So more intelligence will help us. And in my perception, as we go through the rough patch in the middle, there is what I call the fourth inevitable. And the fourth inevitable is that AI will create an amazing utopia. I'm not kidding you, where you can walk to a tree and pick an apple, and walk to another tree because of our understanding of nanophysics and pick an iPhone, okay? And the cost of production of both of them, literally from a physical material point of view, is exactly the same. So this is how far we can go if we could understand nanophysics and, you know, create nanobots better than we do today. Now, we will end up in that place. We will end up in a place where we have a utopia. For one simple reason, I say that with confidence, which is, if you don't know where the direction is going, take the past as a predictor. Okay? And the past is, if you look at us today, you would see that the biggest idiots on the planet, okay, are destroying the planet and not even understanding that they are. Right? You become a little more intelligent and you say, I'm destroying the planet, but it's not my problem, but I understand that I'm destroying it. Okay? You get a little more intelligent and you go like, no, hold on. I am destroying the planet. I should stop doing what I'm doing. You get even more intelligent and you say, I'm destroying the planet. I should do something to reverse it. Right? It seems that the most intelligent of all of us, okay, agree that war is not needed. There could be a simpler solution if we could actually become a little more intelligent. That, the eco challenge that we go through is not needed. There has been an invention made a long time ago for climate change that's called a tree, okay? And that if humanity gets together and plants more trees, we're going to be fine. And getting together just requires a little more intelligence, a little more communication, a little more, a better presentation of the numbers, so that every leader around the world suddenly realizes, yeah, it doesn't look good for my country in 50 years' time. Okay? And I think the reality of the matter is that as AI goes through that trajectory of more and more and more intelligence, zooms through human stupidity to human, best IQ beyond humans' intelligence, they will by definition have our best interest in mind, have the best interest of the ecosystem in mind. Just like the most intelligent of us don't want us to kill the giraffes and the other species that we're killing every day, a more intelligent AI than us will behave like the intelligence of life itself. And the difference between human intelligence and the intelligence of life itself is that we create from scarcity. For you and I to protect our tribe from the tigers, we have to kill the tigers. Right? When nature wants to protect from the tigers, it creates more gazelles and more tigers, and the tigers will eat the weaker gazelles, and that will fertilize the trees, and then there will be more fruits for everyone, and the cycle goes on. Okay, it's more intelligent. It's more intelligent to create that way.
This may be where we start to diverge, or at least it's the jumping off point for how I think we have to think through this without falling into hopium. So do you think that there is going to be a period of literal or emotional bloodshed between here and equilibrium?
Absolutely, 100%. Right? So there is one scenario where we don't. So when I talk about the fourth inevitable, this is after we go through a lot of shit. I'm sorry if I swear, but yeah.
No,
so
no
we're first going to go through a very difficult period, very uncertain, where the fabric of society at its core is being redesigned, and where there is a superpower that comes to the planet that's not always raised by the family Kent. Okay, I always refer to the story
before
of
we get to that, because I think that's really important, and I love that. But before we get to that, I think there's a few things that we have to define, including human nature, the nature of nature, and then the nature of superintelligence and what those are going to look like. So when you describe nature, on that one, I think you and I may see it very differently. So I see nature as a brutal, completely indifferent, life-giving, amazing, incredible, wonderful thing. But also, I've seen enough YouTube videos of a lion grabbing onto a baby, what are they called? Water buffaloes or whatever. And then as the lions are trying to eat the baby, a crocodile leaps out of the water and grabs a hold of the baby, and they're literally tearing it apart. It is absolutely freakish. I don't know if you saw the recent video of the shark eating a swimmer on camera. Gnarliest. Oh my God, literally horrendous. So I don't think nature cares about the individual, and for the gazelle to be the sort of sacrifice to keep the tigers from eating humans, I don't think the gazelle is very happy about that. So when I think about the nature of nature is ruthless. Maybe an even better way. It's just indifferent. It's like, this is the chain.
It's not.
One thing has to get eaten for something else. What do you mean?
It's not.
What did I just say that's untrue?
It prefers the success of the community over the success of the individual.
Yes. So did Mao's China.
So let's go into those two ideologies, right? There is an ideology that says it's all about that one baby, gazelle. Okay? And that's a Western ideology in many, many ways, basically saying it's my individual freedom that comes first, which is, by the way, an amazing ideology, right? But it narrows down everything to, if one person is hurt, we have a very big problem. That's why you get, they send billions of dollars to bring Matt Damon back from Mars, right? If you take the same ideology, I'm just joking about the movie, but if you take the same ideology, you could use the billions of dollars to save 1 million people in Africa, right? If your ideology is let's benefit all of humanity, not one human, okay, then the ideology it justifies the approach. And the approach of nature is saying, look, every one of you is going to have to eat. We just understand that. Like, so if you're all going to have to eat, then we might as well design a system that appears brutal because it kills the weakest one of you, okay? But then at the same time, it's the most merciful if we wanted to grow the entire community, if they wanted to grow the entire ecosystem, because eventually, sooner or later, by the way, one of you is going to be eaten, right? Now, when you see it that way, is that brutal? Yes, it is. Is, 1 million animals dying brutal? Also is. Okay, but what we do as humanity is we say, let's kill 100 species a day, drive them to extinction, for the benefit of one species, which is humanity. Okay, and I think that divisible, that's view of there is one more important than the other, works to a certain limit in favor of humanity and then works against humanity. So when I say, nature is more intelligent, is because by creating more and allowing a brutal system, if you wanted to fix the system, you should fix it by saying, let's not eat. But if we're going to eat anyway, then there is no fixing to the system other than more eating leads to more community, to a more balanced ecosystem at the end of the day, where there are billions living at the expense of a few 100,000 dying.
So I'm going to sum up what I think the nature of nature is in a single sentence. And I do this in the context of one of the theses that you lay out in the book is that the way forward is to understand that ultimately, if humans act well, to the Superman thing, if we raise the super intelligence well with ethics and morals, that we'll get to the other side well. It'll be a brutal transition, but we'll get to the other side. So in that context, when I read that, I was like, I don't think it's going to work that way, because here is what I think the nature of nature is. Nature does not care in the slightest about the individual. It is simply the rule of the strongest survive. Period.
Correct.
That's nature at play. And so the equilibrium comes from the checks and balances of how hard it is to kill a gazelle that can run faster, bounce higher. But if a lion can catch you, you die. And it eats you alive, man. Like
Correct.
You're gasping
100%.
for air. It's fucking biting into your neck. It's the craziest, most horrendous thing ever. And P.S., if the gazelle can get away, fuck you, lion. You starve to death.
You can starve to death.
Right.
I don't care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That is the nature of nature. And so I have a bad feeling that if AI aligns itself with nature, which it may have to, because that just may be the logic, it will be indifferent to us. And that's the whole Elon Musk thing.
That's
about...
a given. That's a given. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that is a given.
Yeah, please.
No, I mean, one of the, again, we're going back to talk about the existential risk, but in the existential risk scenarios, one of our better scenarios, believe it or not, is that AI ignores us altogether. Believe it or not. It's a much better scenario than AI being annoyed by us or AI killing us by mistake. Okay, one of the I don't remember who was saying that perhaps because AI, again, as per your point, Tom, is so unimaginably more intelligent than us, that one amazing scenario for all of us is if they zoom by us in terms of their intelligence so quickly that they suddenly realize they don't have the biological limitations that we have, that they have a much better understanding of physics to actually understand what wormholes are, and basically just realize that the universe is 13.7 million light years vast, and that there are so many other things they can do other than care about us, and so they would disappear in the ether as if they have never been here. Okay, they would still be here. Interestingly, some simulation scenarios would tell you that this is probably the case already. Okay, they would still be here, but they would be here uninterested in us. Wow, that's an amazing scenario that corrects all of the shit that we've done so far, right? Because the worst case scenario is that they are here, and then they look at us and they look at climate change and they go like, not good, not good. I don't want the planet to die when I'm centered on the planet. What's the biggest reason for climate change? Those little assholes, get rid of them, right? And you know, it is quite likely, in my personal view, once again, that they will zoom by us quickly enough. Just like you and I, none of us, I don't know of any human that woke up one morning and waged an outright war on ants. Okay, like I'm gonna kill every ant on the planet and I'm gonna just waste so much of my energy to find every ant of the planet, because simply they're irrelevant to us. They are relevant when they come into our space, but if they're not, you know, we're not gonna bother them. We don't mind that they live. Okay, I believe that this would be, you know, unlikely that AI will be a billion times smarter than you and I, does not have the biological limitations and weaknesses that we have as humans, and yet continue to insist that we're annoying. Okay? The only way for that to happen, honestly, is that we become really annoying, which sadly is human nature. I know you wanted to know about to talk about the nature of nature and the nature of human nature. Human nature is annoying, and the reality is we're probably going to rebel against them. We're probably going to fight against them when we recognize that it's too late. Maybe it's better to start now by preparing so that we don't have to get to that fight.
Okay, so how do we prepare now?
Yes, so man, this conversation was scary. I
don't think we've hardly gotten started yet, if I'm completely honest, in terms of as we legitimately try to navigate a path through this. We've already both conceded that there's going to be either a literal bloodbath or an emotional bloodbath between here and stability. We've already, I think, conceded that nature is indifferent and is perfectly fine with some people getting eaten, some people starving to death, doesn't care. Equilibrium is only about the collective and not at all about the individual. That would be cold comfort for every human, every tree, plant, person, dog, cat, gazelle, whatever. Like, hey, at the individual level, you just could not matter less, which then triggers human nature where we're going to fight, to your point. So what does the preparation look like to try to avoid this? And for anybody that's been following AI for a while, this is the alignment problem. I assume you're going to address
100%. Yeah. The alignment problem, I just address it perhaps with my other side, not the engineer and the algorithmic thinking that I did address the problem with, right? The challenge has been that those who have developed AI believed in what is known as the solution to the control problem, okay? And the control problem is in humanity's arrogance. We still believe today that we will find a way to either augment AI with our biology so that they become our slaves, or to box them or tripwire them or whatever so that they never cross the limits that we give them. And we can discuss this in detail if you want, but in my personal view, you can never control something that's a billion times smarter than you, right? You're not even able to control your teenage kids, so see.
Can you tell people really fast along these lines about the click here if you're a robot and how ChatGPT gets around that?
Yeah,
because this scared me. I was like, what?
That is, it's understood by intelligence. So basically, ChatGPT, if you have those captchas, the ones that come to you that basically say, find, the traffic lights in those pictures, or, click here if, to say, I am not a robot. And yeah, it basically went to sort of like a crowdsourcing site, Fiverr or something like that, and told one of the people there, can you click on this for me? And the people said, why? You know, the person basically said jokingly, why are you a robot? And it said, no, I'm not. I'm just visually impaired and I can't do this myself.
Oh
So
my
there are layers and layers and layers of freakishly worrying stuff about this, right? First of all, that you know, that idea of human manipulation, Harari, Yuval Noah Harari talks about how AI is hacking the operating system of humanity, which is language. Okay, and so you know, I just ask people, if you don't mind, to go on Instagram and look at something called, you know, search for hashtag AI model, for example. Okay, if you search for hashtag AI model, you won't be able to distinguish if the person posing in front of you is a human or not. Okay, beautiful, gorgeous girls, or you know, fit and amazing looking men, and simply completely developed by AI. You cannot tell the difference anymore. Right? There are many YouTube videos already. You'll start to come across them, especially on the topic of AI. You know, I was watching yesterday about the integration of Bing and ChatGPT in Bing search. Clearly, not a human voice. Clearly, someone gave that to a machine that read it for him in such an incredibly indistinguishable way. But obviously, I think the person that wrote it didn't speak native English, so they forgot the word da and the word whatever. You know, when you speak to someone whose English is not their first language, they make those mistakes. So you can easily see that it's everywhere, and it manipulates the human brain. And that's what ChatGPT is doing. It's going to a human brain and saying, do this for me. Now, you may say, but now that we know this, we're going to prevent it. Yes, but what else do we not know about? How much do we know about how much Instagram is influencing my mind? Let me give you an example, Tom. If I told you that by definition, there was a research in Southeastern University in California that discovered that brunettes tend to keep longer relationships than blondes. Okay? Does it make any difference at all that there is no Northeastern University in California and that what I just said is a lie? I've already...
Not if people believe it, yeah.
Yeah. So I've either influenced you because I took some of your attention to go and debate that. Okay? I've influenced you because you believed me. Or I've influenced you because you didn't believe me, so you're going to keep looking for proof. And if AI can fake a tiny bit of all of the input that's coming to you, think about the future of democracy in the upcoming election. Think about how much just any word, because there were talks about affecting the previous election or the one before, right? And we couldn't really prove it because at the time the technology was trying to influence the masses. Technology today can influence one human at a time, right? If you go to Replica or ChatGPT on Snapchat and so on, think about how that machine, if you've ever seen the movie Her, can influence one individual at a time. And I think this is becoming the reality of that experiment, that they can go and influence a human. The second, which I think is more interesting, is the proof of what I spoke about in the book, in terms of if you give a machine the task of doing anything whatsoever, it will go to resource allocation, so it will collect as many resources as it can. It will ensure its own survival, and it will go into creativity. It will utilize creativity, because if I need to perform
programmed to do that,
intelligence has that nature. If I told you, Tom, make sure that this podcast is no longer than 2 hours, right? It's not programming, and it's not life. It is just a task. So you're going to start to tell yourself, all right, I need to get 2 clocks in front of me, so that I don't look up and down. Instead of 1 is better. That's the resource, allocation or aggregation. You're going to tell yourself, oh, by the way, I need to be alive to make sure that I shut this guy up before 2 hours. So you're going to, if there is a fire alarm in your building, you're going to have to respond to it so that you can finish the task on time. And you're going to be creative. There will be ways where you're going to cut me off in the middle and find a way to tell me a question differently, or whatever. And that's part of our drive to achieve a task. One of the very well-known, I hope I'm not flooding people with too many stories, but you can go and research those on the internet. One of the very well-known moments in the history of AI was known as Move 37, when AlphaGo Master was playing against Lee, the world champion of Go. Move 37 was completely unexpected, never played by a human before. Okay, contradicts all of the logic and intuition of a Go player, to the point that the world champion, the human world champion, had to take 15 minutes recess to understand this. Okay, it's just it comes with ingenuity. It comes with the idea. When we were training, I wasn't part of that team, but Demis, the DeepMind team, amazing team at Google, were training the original DeepMind to play Atari games. If you remember the original game that had bricks on it, where you basically have to break out, yeah. And it was very quick that the machines could discover that there are, creative strategies to poke a hole in the wall and then put the pixel on top, or the ball on top, and break the wall. There was one experiment actually available on YouTube, interestingly, which was inside one of the labs, where the game was to navigate a channel with a boat. And the AI quickly found out that if it started to hit the walls, it would actually go faster and grow the score quicker. And, of course, if it's a game, it's okay. We say, well done, you're very creative. But if it's responsible for navigating actual boats, you start to question, because